Good evening. Tonight is June 14th, Flag Day. We're going to start the regular school committee meeting at 7:04 p.m. We are being broadcast live, I believe, on Facebook as well as PATV. Our recording secretary, Leanna Harris, is taking the minutes for this meeting. And I would ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence. As you can see, we're extremely fortunate tonight to have the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School Air Force Junior ROTC be here to present the colors for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you for joining us tonight. Moving down the agenda, I'll entertain a motion regarding the minutes of May 24th, 2022.
Motion to receive and approve.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Dunn, seconded by Ms. Carpenter. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Do we seem very loud today, or? Yeah, okay. I'm not wearing hearing aids yet, so I couldn't have turned anything up. But anyway, Mr. Olympio, if you can talk to us about the approval of bills.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 5052 in the amount of $1,246,955.65, subject to audit, dated June 14, 2022.
Second.
You heard the motion made by Mr. Olympio, seconded by Ms. Carpenter in regard to warrant number 5052. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter? Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson? Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 5054 in the amount of $72,910.63, dated June 14, 2022, subject to audit.
You heard the motion made by Mr. Olympio in regard to warrant number 5054, seconded by Ms. Carpenter. Roll call vote.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter? Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. If there's no objection, while we have the Air Force Junior ROTC here, Ms. Dunn has a matter on for new business. Ms. Dunn?
Thank you very much. I had requested that the JROTC join us this evening to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and it ended up being very appropriate, seeing as how it's Flag Day. But I thought it would be nice for everyone to hear about the great accomplishments of this group of students. They've won all kinds of awards, they've done marvelous things, they're thriving at the high school. And so I'm going to ask if Lieutenant Colonel Erickson could step up and fill us in on all that's going on with the students, and then they are heading out to another competition.
Lieutenant Colonel, You outrank Miss Dunn. You can stand or sit, whatever your pleasure.
Right.
Your
Oh,
house.
this thing's, okay, now it's on. Wow. Thank you so much for having us. We're honored to be here. This is a great opportunity, especially Flag Day, like you said. So to do this on this day, last year we did an event at the Wakefield Elks. Mr. Eric Jetter was a dad of one of our former cadets, and he reached out and we participated there. So we have 10 cadets, 10 or 12, over there with Sergeant Lanning right now, starting their activity. And so we'll soon head over that way and support that event. But I wanted to introduce this team, especially. First, to my right, well, from the right going left, Cadet Christian Swenson. He's a second-year cadet. Next is Cadet Wanderson Philemond, first-year cadet, and then Cadet Jay Bardina, second-year cadet, and Cadet Caden Lanning, second-year cadet. These are all cadet officers in our program, and all four of them have made rank relatively fast. Typically, the cadet officers are seniors. So these four are exceptional and contributed greatly to an award that we won as a unit. There's about 10% of the over 800 units nationwide are recognized as a Distinguished Unit Award with Merit. And how you earn that is, one, we did collectively as a unit over 1,300 hours of community service in the academic year. We had exceptionally high physical fitness scores across the board, and we had an inspection in November by our headquarters, and we were recognized as meeting standards or exceeding standards, which doesn't happen very often. And so our regional director, even though we're on probation because we were under 100 cadets, he put in an exemption for us, and we are awarded that based on our performance and the way we brought the unit. So next year, we're projected to be about 110 cadets going in, which is the first time we'll be over 100 since 2016. So, and these four cadets are instrumental in that and their activities. So I wanted to bring them specially. They're kind of like our all-star color guard, and we wanted to bring them out here to show them off, and we're really proud of them. The fun part about this program is I'm just there to make sure nobody gets hurt. Sarge and I just kind of coach them and make sure nobody's going to do anything really, really bad and get injured. But otherwise, we just let them do it. And these four especially have done just that. They lead. They make mistakes. They are not perfect. They are in high school. They are freshmen and sophomores in high school. But they are gaining skills that are invaluable to their future. And very few of our kids go on and serve in the military, and that's okay, because they'll use the skills that they get from our program later in life and whatever they do, because they're going to be good leaders and they're going to be great citizens. So I'm proud to be here and with them, and I want to thank you again for having me here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel.
And just to let everyone know, if you look at the uniforms these students have, those ribbons, many of those are earned for academic achievement. And it was amazing to go to their change of command ceremony, which was completely run by the students. As Lieutenant Colonel said, he's there to make sure no one gets hurt. They did an incredible presentation on a par with the regular military change of commands. And when you saw the requirements for the medals that they earned, they were fabulous. Many are for drill team activities and physical fitness, so many more based on academics, attendance, leadership. They really work hard for those, and you can be very, very proud of our unit. They're wonderful.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. If there's no objection, I'd like to go to the superintendent's report and have him introduce the new principal of Peabody Veterans Memorial High School.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. So I'm pleased to bring forth our new high school principal, Ms. Brooke Randall. Many of you may remember Ms. Randall. She started her career as a teacher in Peabody as a math teacher in 2006, taught for a period of time, and then was elevated to department head, where she served as the math department head for a few years, and then again was promoted to dean of students at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School. For the past 5 years, she has served as the assistant principal at North Andover High School. She has a CAGS in administration and a master's in teaching. We did our interview process, and she was the unanimous choice. We're very excited to bring Ms. Randall back into the district. She knows a number of the teachers there. They're very excited to have her, and we're really looking forward to her instructional leadership and her ability to bring a positive and supporting culture back to the high school. So I'd like to introduce you all to Ms. Randall. I know many of you know her, but welcome back, and we're very excited to work with you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here and for the introduction, Dr. Vidala. I am so excited to be back at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, back in the Peabody community. It's a very special place, near and dear to my heart, which is why I felt very passionate about being back in this community. So I just thank you all for the opportunity, and very much looking forward to getting to work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. Ms. Carpenter?
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Randall. I am more than pleased to see you here tonight. I am so hopeful for what you're going to bring to the high school. We have been together before, as we discussed during the parade. You had a really meaningful spot or position in that parade. You can share it, or you don't have to share it. She was our Tanner Bull. Yeah. But I am really hopeful for what you're going to bring to the high school, and I'm looking forward to working with you, and I hope that you'll reach out to this committee anytime you need anything.
Thank you much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And that was a bucket list item, to be the Tanner the Bull in the Centennial Parade. So thank you. Yeah, glad we got to share that moment.
Mr. Swanson?
Ms. Randall, obviously, congratulations. I'm excited for what you're going to be bringing to school. I think, as people heard that you were going to be your next principal, the story of the bull and the pride you bring to Peabody was all over the place. So, people are excited, we're excited, and we look forward to what you'll be bringing to the high school. So, congratulations, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Swanson. I appreciate it.
Ms. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Ms. Randall, it's just so nice to see you again and to welcome you back, and it's going to be very nice to work with you. Congratulations, and thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it. Good to see you again as well.
Mr. Amico?
Yeah, Ms. Randall, thank you for coming back and welcome. You're a role model to both our students and our teachers and our staff up at the high school. You were a teacher, then a department head, then a dean. You've played all those roles, so you can empathize with everyone in that building. So, and I know your leadership will really lead us to good things. So, thank you for being here, and welcome back.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Appreciate it.
Mr. Olympio?
Congratulations and welcome back. And I think the first time I formally met you was in costume, and but back then that said a lot. You know, I said to myself, you know, here's somebody that can relate, can adapt to all different situations. We missed you at graduation over the last few years. You ran a tight ship on the graduation day, but yet you can laugh and smile and have fun. So I'm just looking forward to working with you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
There are a few opportunities that we have as a committee to watch somebody like you literally grow up in our district, and you have. And then we had an error in judgment perhaps and let you slip away. So I wanted to thank you for having faith in us and being willing to come back and recognizing the value of our district and how you can contribute to make it even better than it already is. So thank you. Welcome back. I absolutely look forward to working with you, and I expect big and huge things from you. No pressure, but I think you're a very dynamic person that's capable of taking that building and the population in that building to great places. So good luck to you, and like someone said, I think Ms. Carpenter, if you need anything, we are here for you.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for putting your trust in me, and look forward, again, to getting to work, and thank you all very much for having me tonight. Go Tanners!
Moving back to the agenda, we'll go to continued business. Ms. Dunn, the Welch School MSBA project update, please.
Well, the big excitement for the Welch School project was last Monday, excuse me, when we had the groundbreaking. It went very well. Whoever controlled the weather did a great job for us. We had a wonderful time with the students, and all of the students were outside. Mr. Jack McCarthy, the executive director of SBA, attended. Senator Lovely, Representative Walsh, and Representative Cairns were there. We had Mr. Swanson was there. We had a wonderful time just explaining what was going to happen next, and then Dr. Vidala gave a nice speech, so did the mayor, but the best ones were from the kids. They gave beautiful speeches, and actually one of them really would bring a tear to your eye, because the little girl that stood up said, "I can't wait, we're gonna have windows." So it was really a long time in coming, but well worth the wait. What's happening now is I don't think the trucks have arrived yet with some of the storage units, but over the next few days, there will be some storage trailers and construction trailers which will be brought on site. And then on the 20th, they're going to roll onto the property and begin working. They will probably start putting up some security fencing this week and most likely next week. And then they're going to start working right away. The first thing they will do is to go in and take out the core of the building, which is the library, principal's office, and nurse's station. That's where the biggest construction will take place anyway. And then they'll be proceeding through the building to get it ready so that in August, when the students come back, much of what they're working on right now will be completed, and then they will go into the next phase of construction, and then they will begin moving around the building as we move the students at specifically timed areas. The funding and the cost of the project are still being affected greatly by the world economy. Construction costs at every MSBA project, or any project around, is up at least 20%. And our OPM, the construction company, and the designers are all working to do what's called valued engineering, which honestly, it's cutting things to try to make everything come in under the budget. Many things that they're working on will not affect the project in any negative way, but it's a lot of work, because they have to have those drawings done and completed in order for construction to begin. So everything is based off the current drawings. If they make any adjustment, it's a ripple effect. It's kind of fascinating to hear them describe what they do. So they're working very hard to do their very best with Peabody, and it's going to be a very nice project when it's done, and it started off really well last Monday. So I'm glad to answer any questions. There will be a Welch School Building Committee meeting near the end of the month. sorry, I don't have a date because of the fact that they're trying to engineer all of these different figures and plans and everything. But we really won't see any difference. The difference will be for the construction company, for the designers and the OPM. We're still on time and still planning on having this completed for the fall of 2023, so our students will go into a renovated, completely renovated building.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Ms. Carpenter?
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Through the chair, I think probably to Dr. Vidala, did we have a summer program running there, like for kids only or anything that we've notified, impacted, changed?
Yep, so For Kids Only will be running at the South School and at the Carroll School.
Oh,
over the
great.
summer. Yep, so we've relocated, those programs will still run. Dr. Lord worked very closely with FKO to make sure that those students would not be without a summer program.
So those families have been notified or aware of the distance, okay, great.
Yeah, we
Thank you.
tried to use the South because it was the closest.
Closer, you're right,
Yep,
okay.
and some students are closer to the Carroll, so we had those two options, so they were able to choose.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Ms. Dunn, I just want to commend you for the amount of work and effort that you've put into this project and this subcommittee. I have the privilege of sitting on the subcommittee with you, and you're chairing it, and you're keeping a tight ship. This project would not be starting now without your efforts and you keeping people to task. So thank you very much for all the work that you're doing. And just because it's a renovation, I think this one may be more work for you than when you chaired the Higgins School Building project. So thank you.
Even Mrs. Maccarelli sees the difference. The paperwork is incredible. It really is on this project, and we haven't even started with the, with what's coming. I know what paperwork is coming. This is really amazing. I will tell you one thing, though. I had kept it quiet and didn't say anything at the last meeting, but the surprise at the event was that the students had shovels in the Welch teal with the Welch emblem on it, and Consigli Construction provided construction hats for all the students, and at lunch, the cafeteria provided Welch Wildcat Bites cookies to celebrate the groundbreaking. So there were some really nice touches. Oh, and the students, you probably saw the pictures, students did all of the drawings that were behind, which were like cards and posters. So it was really a kid-centered ceremony, and there were a lot of nice things, but I had kept you in suspense on purpose.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. I was remiss at the beginning of this meeting to say the mayor apologizes for not being able to be here tonight. He's a little bit under the weather, so in that regard, the next item under continued business is superintendent's evaluation. We're going to table until such time as the mayor is able to join us. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. We already took care of item 1. Item number 2, if you can start there, Dr. Vidala.
Absolutely, thank you, Mr. Hockman. So item number 2 is an update on social emotional learning. So as you know, this has been really at the forefront since the pandemic, even prior to the pandemic, but we've really tried to find a way to measure social emotional learning and make sure that we're really attending to our students' needs. The Peabody Education Foundation has been amazing with the support that they've given us over the years. And this year, they solicited some donations from some of their big donors, J.B. Thomas and Gravoc and Leahy Behavioral Health. And we were able to put out a number of speakers at the high school. We had Norm Bossio, and then at all of our elementary schools and our middle school, we had an incredible presentation from Rob Surrett where he did some artwork, and it was really an inspiring move. We also had social emotional libraries in all of our elementary schools, which was funded by this mental health initiative, and that was featured on WBZ at the McCarthy School because Ms. Champany, the school adjustment counselor, was very much instrumental in that. So Dr. Lord has also received a grant over the past 2 years, and it looks like we're going to continue the grant. And it's a social emotional individual survey for all of our students that they take. And we get pre and post data, and now we're really able to track and have some data around that, along with our local data around the self-manager rubric that we have for the vision of a graduate. So I'll turn this over to Dr. Lord. He's done a great job with this, and he's got a little presentation on social emotional learning and the amount of work that we've been doing in each of the schools to track the information and to really work closely with our counselors and our school adjustment counselors and our guidance counselors to make sure they're equipped to have as much information as they can so we can universally screen kids and provide them with as much support as possible. So, Dr. Lord?
Thanks, Dr. Verdalla. So just a little history. First, I want to thank publicly, there's probably 25 people, 2 or 3 people in every building that have been instrumental in implementing this over the last couple of years, and they've been really very, very helpful. So I hope I'm going to do an adequate job of representing their work too. If we go on to the next slide, Dr. Verdalla. So a little history here. A couple of years ago, wrote a grant on social emotional learning. We were one of 10 districts in the state of Massachusetts who were selected to implement the CELIS survey, which people might be familiar with. It measures the 5 Castle areas of social emotional health for kids. Those are pretty valid and reliable tools that have been around for quite a while. Our staff went through training on the Castle initiative and how to do this with our students. And the Castle has been measured for the students 3 times now. Last spring, last fall, and this spring. So where we're looking right now is, at this slide, is where we were thinking a year ago. We had our first round of CELIS data, and we looked at this information on where are we going to do with it. First thing we realized, we need to have our guidance counselors, as Dr. Verdalla mentioned, start to look at this information on each individual student, make interventions on students where they self-perceive themselves as needing to have some support in one of those 5 areas of social emotional need. Putting in interventions and also SWAN maps. They weren't so great a year ago, but the state has done an awesome job of putting together SWAN maps. A SWAN map is a portrait of a student that allows you to find out where exactly that student feels they have social emotional strengths and social emotional weaknesses. There's one for every student who took the survey in the city from grade 3 to grade 12. As you know, we also have the self-manager rubric. It is part of the vision of the graduate. It's one of those 7 competencies. It's been measured at the high school for the last 4 years on report cards. The self-manager rubric is in, I think this is the first senior, this graduating class, these seniors are the first ones to see the vision of the graduate performance for all of their kids since their grade 9 year. Self-manager is one of the ones that is now district-wide. Our homeroom teachers measure the self-management of our students, and the one that we looked at last year was perseverance. That's one of the 5 things that we measure from the teacher perspective in Peabody. So perseverance is where we focused, and these are some of the things that we focused on. Again, our staff did Castle indicator presentations and the 3 signature best practices for instruction for improving social emotional health in the classrooms. This was delivered by the 20 people that I just shared with you in each of our schools. The libraries went to all of the elementary schools, compliments of the Peabody Education Foundation. Rob Surratt came in, did a great job. I was at the Peabody Education Foundation showing the same presentation this morning. I have to tell you, there's some surprises coming next year with Rob Surratt. It's going to be a lot of fun. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it'll be really cool. The high school focused their advisory time on social emotional learning, and Norm Bossio, great speaker, came to the high school. Those are just some of the things that we did with respect to social emotional health. But I would suggest the things that are most important are the things that you don't see on that slide, and those are the things that the teachers and students do every day to make life feel good, to do things well once they're school, and to have a positive social emotional experience. This is our data that I am really pleased to share with you. These are the 5 areas that we measure from the student's perspective on their social emotional health: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. The blue is last fall, the red is this spring. So you can see in all 5 areas of social emotional health, there's been a big jump, and this was the district's #1 goal for the year, is to improve, monitor, and measure the social emotional health of their students over time, and hopefully illustrate it even better next year. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, that was where the students were. Each of the schools has their own portrait of those 5 indicators, and behind the scenes, I don't know if this will show Dr. Verdalla. Right. So it's a great place for the guidance counselors to go. For example, I was looking at the high schools from last spring. The guidance counselors went through the list of all the kids and identified the students that were scoring lower on the CELIS survey, and we put, counselors did interventions and monitored those kids over time and got to a better place. Anyway, we can compare our CELIS data from the fall and the spring through that link. This is the self-manager. Again, this is the teacher's perspective of how students are doing in the classroom. And those are the 5 things that our teachers look at through the course of the year: perseverance, respect, strengths and struggles for the students, their strategies, routines for coping, and healthy lifestyle. Again, a slight bump in all 5 of those based on the teacher's perspective. And I can share with you that the State Department actually did a correlation between the student's perspective of their social emotional health and the teachers. And there's a 0.4 correlation with the group. So the kids and the teachers are tending to see in a very similar way their social emotional health of the both groups. Anyway, perseverance was the one that we wanted to bring up, and it went up a little bit, so that was helpful. Again, there's self-manager data here that teachers can go and look at by their homeroom or by their school, and they can make decisions about how they want to build their school improvement plans for the coming year. This next slide is the questions that the social emotional learning teams are bringing to their principals as we speak. It's been going on for a week or so since we got this data back. How will this CELIS and self-manager data inform our school improvement plans for next year? When will the guidance staff and school adjustment counselors review this information? The SWAN maps, which illustrate each individual student, we hope to be able to give those to next year's homeroom teachers. So as the teachers walk in the door with their students, they'll have a little idea of the social emotional portrait of the students that they're coming to them. And again, the self-manager data is sitting in Aspen. So when the teachers look at their homeroom list for next year, they can open up Aspen and see the last 3 iterations of self-management from the previous teacher's perspective. So if I'm a 4th grade teacher for next year, I can see where the 3rd grade teacher felt their student was last fall and last spring, and the 2nd grade teacher in the previous spring. So there's some really good information for us to keep an eye on the kids with their social emotional health, and I'm curious to see where our team wants to go with it. Let's go to the last slide, Dr. Vidala. Again, a big shout out to the social emotional learning teams in all the schools. We'll adjust it a little bit for the coming year, but some really good things going on with respect to social emotional health. And this was our #1 goal for the year for the kids, so I'm really proud to be able to share this with you.
Thank you, Dr. Lord. There's a lot of information there, and it was pretty extremely impressive. Thank you to you and to your team that was able to put that data together, and all for the benefit of our students and keeping them moving forward. So thank you. Mr. Amico?
Through the chair, Dr. Laura, thank you so much for really believing in this. This is so important for the health of our kids and the health of our future. There was a time, and we've been in education for over 20 years. There was a time when just a few kids were at risk, and they would group them as at risk. But today in 2022, every kid's at risk, regardless of their background, regardless of their gender, regardless of where they come from. Every kid is at risk, and this is such a great way to address it. And again, thank you so much for all you do, not only with this, but within the community. You're everywhere. You really, I love our conversations just about kids, never mind the education end of it. I just love hearing about what kids are doing, because that all ties into this. When you really believe in kids, that's when they know it. And so thank you so much for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Just happy to be useful to good people. I did want to share one other thing, that we were one of the pilot districts for the state of Massachusetts, and the commissioner now has a proposal from the other districts to make the CELIS survey the statewide measure for how students across the state and their social emotional health is illustrated. So I'll be very curious to see if that passes through their board. But the data behind it is a tremendous amount of data manipulation. It would be great for the state to take that over instead of having our team do it and just have pretty charts to be able to show you and make quick decisions on it. But anyway, they're looking at that, and I'm so delighted that Peabody's at the point of the spear for the state of Massachusetts for measuring social emotional health and illustrating it to the community. Thanks.
Thank you again, Dr. Lord. Dr. Vidala, I think. I'm sorry, Mr. Swanson, I didn't see.
Sorry, through you to Dr. Lord. Again, I'm gonna just jump on what Mr. Miko said, and thank you. You know, you've always been great for the kids, but this is something that is extremely important to our kids now, and you're a champion for it. You've always been driving for the overall health of our kids and their learning, so I appreciate that. I did have one quick question for you. As you said, through Aspen, the teachers could look back and see how other teachers students were progressing based on the teacher's review. Do the teachers, as they transition from school, still see that all the way back? So they can see from, if somebody's going from 5th to 6th grade, the 6th grade teachers can see that progression as well?
Exactly. The way that Aspen works is each time a teacher opens up that Vision of the Graduate self-manager record, they create a new one. And they put there's a rubric, a district-wide rubric to measure those 5 elements. And each teacher looks at that rubric and thinks about that student at that time and puts a number in that cell, adds them all up, and I think they can get up to 20 because they measure the 5 things and they're on a 4-level rubric. So as that number gets dropped in, next year they show up again, following year they show up again. So in time, we hope to have multiple years of how the student's doing. It's very interesting to see how the social emotional health from the teacher's perspective changes over the years. Some teachers have a different perspective of a student than another. I mean, it's all statistics. There's nothing absolute about this, but it gives us a nice portrait. I'm very, very confident in the CELIS validity and reliability data. If the students took that CELIS survey seriously and they really thought about how they were responding, we've got a great portrait of the kids and where they need. We can bring those SWAN maps to an IEP meeting or a 504 meeting or an IST meeting, or just share it with parents during parent conferences. And parents will say, oh my, that's right, that's my kid. That's what they're struggling with, and that's what they're good at. And it's really a helpful thing. But yeah, it's good. Thanks.
Thank you very much again. So I assume the CELIS surveys are very much like some surveys we're taking. Kids are gonna be kids, and they might just, yep, good. But I assume the questions are repetitive over time, over the survey, so it would ask the same question in different ways so they can truly dig into and kind of unmask anything that somebody might be hiding.
Exactly right. When surveys like this are developed, what happens is they'll have a battery of questions that they think is measuring responsible decision making. And as students ask those questions and they do it over and over and over and over again, the clarity of the question statistically and significantly can lead to a valid measure, because the kids are understanding what the question is and the kids are responding the way they should, because compared to all the other kids that are doing it over time, it's valid and reliable over time. That's how they get those validity and reliability results. The State Department's been awesome. The people that are at DESE, I don't say that very often, but I mean, they're really quite good, and at least for this data crunching stuff, I mean, they've been really awesome. And so, I mean, when they put I did my PhD with SPSS. I haven't seen it in 20 years, right? They threw all this data in, and they said, "Wow, Chris, your correlations are 0.44," and I said, "Yay!" So, I mean, it's all good. No complaints.
Again, thank you for the awesome presentation of the data, and thank you for being a champion for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Lord. If there's no objection, we seem to be going all over this agenda. We're gonna come back to the superintendent's report after we have public participation. Seems like we have a few folks here with us at the Higgins Library. If you'd like to come forward, please take a seat, state your name and your address. And Dr. Vidala, if anyone online wishes to participate publicly, please raise your hand and Dr. Vidal will recognize you when we have an opportunity.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pamela Vecchio. I live at 117 Lowell Street. I do have a handout to go with what I need to comment on. It's extremely timely that you're talking about social emotional learning. I have waited quite a long time to come before this committee and share my experience with social emotional learning. I could go on and on about this topic. I'm a special educator. I've worked in special education for 17 years. My son has significant diagnostic social emotional disability. And so I've had experience with him being in 3 schools, the district school, the 45-day evaluation at Walker, and ultimately after 2 years, or trying 2 years in Higgins, he has since been a year out of district. I want to say that our journey has been, as me as a special educator and a parent, my journey has been one of complete trauma, one that has impacted our family greatly, and one that has damaged my son to the point that his school now asks what trauma has he gone through, and they're trying to undo everything that's undone. Dr. Lord, I greatly appreciate what you're doing and what you're talking about. And maybe this doesn't exist anymore, but the therapeutic program and what goes on at where it was housed when my son was there, the West Memorial School, was extremely impactful. And I'd like to show you pictures of it. Because, Patty, can you help me? A second, I'm sorry. This is Kevin's aunt. Oh, I said his name. These rooms
Ms.
are
Vecchio, Ms. Vecchio, if I can just interrupt you for 1 second. If we can keep this, your comments as general as possible and not to any specifics.
As general as possible. These rooms, to my knowledge, they were used, and the principal, the law, you have copies of the law. You have copies of what is seclusion and versus timeout rooms. You have copies tonight of a poem that I just love, because if you're a parent of a special ed student, it's a great thing to read. I want you to know that maybe you're going to tell me tonight that these rooms are taken down, that they no longer exist. I'm going to tell you that many times my son was in these rooms. Kindergartners were in these rooms. These rooms are side by side. And so my son would often come home and tell me that he would hear another kindergartner crying next door. He could not move his arms. There was no way for an adult to calm him. And he would say, they always tell me, be calm, be calm. I don't think after you look at these pictures, being dragged down a hallway in whatever safety care, CPI, I don't even remember what the staff was trained in. This was a philosophy that I used. 1 advocate, 2 lawyers, 2 mediations, pre-conference trial. My lawyers were free. I would love to see the bill of the district regarding this case, just my case alone. So I would hope that this room would no longer be used. In your packet also, there was a swing that was supposed to be for sensory integration at the other side of those rooms. It did fall from the ceiling. I'm an occupational therapist. I use swings all the time for sensory integration, and I copied stuff from the manual. It was not installed properly. But again, they blamed the student that had the significant behaviors. This is related to the self-contained programs that are supposed to be therapeutic, that are supposed to treat the trauma kids, that are supposed to treat children that may have bipolar, PTSD, AD, whatever it is, you name it, is what it's for. So I would push. My goal here tonight is to push for that. If these things are still in existence, I finally feel comfortable enough to come forward, because my student is settled and there's no fear of retribution and there's no fear of anything, but I can't let our experience continue to be in vain. I can't live my life like that to have it be in vain, because it has impacted us greatly in a negative way, but we will get through that. But my point being, I would love the school committee to seriously consider a mental health program, improvement council that has stakeholders in it, that has community members, that has parents in it, because even a principal, if you read the law, the principal does not even need to know that a student is in there until after 30 minutes. My son could go in there many times a day, and the kindergartner next to him or somebody else would be there many times a day. He's been to Walker. They don't have any such room like that. He's in a social emotional 8th to 12th now. They have no such rooms like that. And I really think, as a city, I grew up here, I'm a graduate of Peabody High, I feel like we can do so much better than that. I mean, I wouldn't put my dog in there overnight to be kennelled if I wanted to go on vacation. It's just something that's completely inhumane, and I'm flabbergasted that they got built about 4 years ago. They got built, And I'm just thinking, I know what I have to do in my school. I can't even get my wall painted, or if I want to paint my wall, without going through facilities, going through the principal, going through, so it's not the current special ed director or whatever who did things, but how come nobody went, oh my God, maybe this is not it's not a best practice. It's not a good practice at all. It looks like a torture chamber. And I'm finally able to come forward. Yeah, I went in the school and I took pictures. I'm sorry, I did. That's where my son went, I should know. But in your little log, all they say is timeout space, timeout space. So if you're not a savvy special ed parent and you don't believe your kid at all, you have no idea what's going on. And I'm sure most of you may not even know that this is what's been going on for 4 years. To me, it's horrifying. And if that doesn't get you, if my sob story and the laws don't get you, I'm gonna tell you, of the one cohort, okay, of my son's original cohort, because parents, you build relationships. That's his friends, that's our oikos, that's our thing, right? We don't, because he's so never included and so substantially separate, that's my peer group too. The parents are my peer group. I'm gonna tell you, just out of his one class that was multi-age, you can only have by law 9 special ed kids in a self-contained classroom. The statistics for this cohort, 5 are out of district, 1 dropped out, 2 went on with special ed supports. And I just think of, like, if that doesn't speak to a budget. I know my boss, if I had a whole class or cohort go out, number 1, I'd be out of a job. Number 2, there'd be hell to pay. So from whatever standpoint you need to look at this, I'm begging the school committee to make sure that there's community stakeholders, that there's parents involved, that there's businesses, that there's people, so that these can get taken down. And yeah, the law is vague. Oh, line of sight, clean, lit, whatever. But I beg to read the law of seclusion versus which is illegal. And you have that in your packet, and I would beg you to read that. And I beg the committee tonight to make sure that this ends with my family and my experience and his friend's experience. Can you imagine his friend that was a trauma kid that was in foster care goes in there? Can you imagine that? And I went through so much legal mumbo jumbo, and I did homeschool. I could tell you so much, and my information is on there on your packet. If you want to hear the real gory details, I'd be happy to go into it. But just imagine, like, being dragged down there, and I get in the notes, oh, he was resisting and kicking and screaming. And once I saw, he's like, Mom, wouldn't you? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Wouldn't you? I mean, this is just something that seems so archaic, inhumane, old. It seems like something I'd see in Danvers State in 1960 something, 50s? I can't even say it. And it was only built 4 years ago. Because he's 8th going to 9th, 5 tops, if my math is wrong or off. But again, to look at the programs, the real programs, the kids who really have the social emotional disability. And I'm looking to you because you just gave that great presentation. And I think it's valid. I'm working in special education. I know the COVID impact. I know the social emotional. These kids are under so much pressure. It's so challenging, this world they live in. I get that. But I think you need to look at the program of the real kids that are diagnostically challenged. And if this is how we treat that, I think that's just, I don't have any words. I don't have any words to say that. But I also think from a budget standpoint, like, we can learn so much from people who don't do these things that maybe have higher success rate. I mean, I fought this legally so much, and yet 2 years later, I wanted him to stay at Walker, and 2 years later, he still went out of district. So it's just, I don't know, money, resources, time, trauma, I could go on and on, but I really implore this school committee to set up something where there's stakeholders and there's people, and we're working together as a community to do so much better than this. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if anyone even has questions for me, but I'd be happy to meet with anybody off the record to really go into the details. And I would love it if someone would tell me, like, these don't exist at the West School anymore, but I challenge you to go look and check.
Thank you for being here tonight, Ms. Vecchio, and providing us with this information. Unfortunately, our policy doesn't permit us to respond to public participation, and However, I suspect you'll be contacted by Dr. Vidala, Special Education Director, as well as many members, if not all the members of the school committee in the near future.
And I
Thank-
totally get that, and I appreciate you guys, just if even one or two reach out and we can make a difference so that our experience is not in vain, that would be amazing, right? Because we can do better. We can do so much better, you know? So, thank you so much for letting me get my story out there so that someone else's story will be so much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Vidal, do we have anyone else with their hand raised for public participation?
Yes, we have one online. So, Michelle, I'm going to bring you in. You can unmute. Please state your name. So, Michelle, if you're able to... Okay, you're on. Michelle, it seems like you're talking, but we can't hear you, so we're going to go to people who are here, and I'll bring you back, and we'll see if we can resolve that issue.
Ms. Henry? As you know, please state your name and address for the record.
Does that do it? Oh, sorry. I have a big mouth, so I'm not used to that. I wasn't planning to come tonight. My name is Mary Henry. I am a teacher at Peabody High School, and I live at 15 Fay Avenue in Peabody. And I really actually came to read a note and to thank this committee for supporting our Culture Club mural, and especially Beverly Griffin Dunn, who was with us right from the beginning and really was a great supporter and advocate. I want to thank Dr. Lord and Dr. Chase for coming as well. And I know that many of you had other commitments, and I understand that because it's a tough time of year. Oops. But we had 3 district judges there as well, and we had a very healthy group of folks. We had a nice report in the Lynn item, and there is going to be another report in the Salem News coming up. I wanted to read this letter from Kim Budd, who is, she didn't graduate from Peabody High because she moved halfway through high school, but she went to Peabody High School, and she's one of the roots in our mural. And she is, for those of you who do not know, a member of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. So we should be very proud to have someone like that who has gone to our school. 2 members of the Supreme Judicial Court are from Peabody High, just so you know. Or from Peabody. Dear members and friends of the Culture Club, I regret that I cannot be present for the unveiling of the mural you created. From the pictures I saw, it looks fantastic. I am truly heartened by the meaning behind it. It is so important to acknowledge injustice, but also to continue to strive for a better future. I am inspired to know that you are among the leaders of the next generation. Most sincerely, Kim Budd. She needs a little penmanship help. I just want to thank you all for the support and let you know that I'm hoping that the middle school club will be happening next year and that we can continue to grow this important mission of doing better with acknowledging diverse groups of children at Peabody High School. And I know I personally will be dedicating my career towards that. So thank you and appreciate it. And nothing negative. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Ms. Henry, you as well. Dr. Vidala? Is
Okay,
Michelle still
we're
with
going to
us?
try this again with Michelle. So I will bring her in.
Dedicating my career towards that. So thank you and appreciate it. And nothing negative. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Ms. Henry, you as well. Dr. Vidala?
Okay, we're gonna try this again with Michelle. So I will bring her in.
Can you hear me? So, thank you and appreciate it. And nothing negative. Have a nice night. Can you hear me?
Michelle, it appears you're on. You may go. If you're watching online, Michelle, if you could just use the computer and just speak directly into the microphone.
Michelle, it appears you're on.
I'm hoping you can hear me. If someone could just raise their hand, I'll know. Great, thank you. Michelle Baker, 13 Sunset Drive. I just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Scoper had echoed of many of the teachers and parents previously, which she gave a very articulate presentation to the school committee, that everyone just wants a safe environment with stability, and she asked for more transparency by the school committee. Over this past week, I've emailed you pictures of the numerous closed bathrooms. I sent you a video of a teacher trying to get a stall open so a student could get out. She eventually had to climb to the top of the stall and jump down. I've also sent you many of the stalls that were closed and the teachers that were open but said absolutely no students. Just the bathrooms, you've already heard about them over and over. So I didn't receive anything back from all but two of you, and one was that it was going to the school administration. And the other said that this has been going on for years and it's nothing new. Well, I don't understand why the school committee wouldn't have the scope over this to be handling it prior to this, number one. And I asked, and nobody wanted to respond, as to why we're not going and requesting somebody from the unions. If we have absolutely no staff here, then we could certainly have a union member come in. So nobody answered me, and I took 20 minutes out of my day the other day, and I spoke with Dave O'Loughlin. He's the business agent of IBEW, Local 103. And given the health and safety issues that are pressing at the high school, Mr. O'Loughlin was kind enough to listen to some of the items that Ms. Anderson brought before the committee. Given these pressing issues for electrical at the high school, we had a discussion and we agreed that he would need the city's electrical inspector to contact him with a list of items, and additionally, depending on the length of the work to be done, he would send out a crew of volunteers to address most of those issues. This took me 20 minutes to do, and this has been going on for years. I'd be happy to contact the plumbers union. I'd be happy to contact the general contractors union. I can do any of that if you would like me to. I didn't receive a response, so I don't know if this is something you can do. I know that you contracted Hayden Safe and Lock to fix the locks in the school. But I would appreciate if somebody would reach out to me and just get the number from Dave O'Loughlin and take advantage of this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for public participation, Michelle. I'm certain that somebody from the administration and some members of the school committee will be contacting you.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. This is going to be discussed later in our agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Is there anybody else with their hand raised? Anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? Thank you for joining us tonight. Again, please start with your name and your address.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank each member of the school committee for all you do to support our student body. And I'd like to thank Ms. Vecchio for speaking her truth tonight, sharing her own experience, and also for speaking for those who cannot speak for themselves. And my question is for Dr. Law. I am really relieved to see your presentation about social and emotional support for our students. I have two questions. One is, when they distribute the survey to the students, do the students complete the survey by themselves or with the help of parents?
The surveys are,
Dr. Lord, unfortunately, yeah, Kia, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Unfortunately, our policy doesn't permit us to answer questions that are presented in public participation. I'm certain if you present those questions, Dr. Lord will get back to you in an extremely timely manner.
Okay, sounds great. The second question, if it's allowed, you know, let me know if it is. The second question I had is, after the survey is taken and you get all the stats and the results, I look at it as an assessment to see if there is a need, which obviously from the result from the students as well as the faculty there is. And another kudos again for also providing training to staff to help them recognize the signs of mental illness or social emotional distress. After you get back all the feedback, how does it translate into action? If it's appropriate for you to answer, you can let me know. If it's the same case, I think I will follow up in a different occasion. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us tonight. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak tonight? Dr. Vidal, or is there anyone online that has their hand raised?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, we will go back to the superintendent's report, and I think we're on item number 3, Dr. Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. So item 3 is one of our favorites, donations. So a big thank you to Chuck Holden and ExxonMobil Educational Alliance. Each year, Chuck and his family donate significant money to the school district, and this year, $500 to the South Memorial Elementary School for STEM learning activities, and $500 to the Carroll Elementary to support STEM programming as well. So they've really committed to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics across our schools, and each year the Holden family and Holden Oil has made generous donations. And so in your packet you'll see 2 letters, one from Dr. Higgins and one from Mrs. Smith at the Carroll, just notifying the committee of these generous donations, and I'd entertain a motion to accept with gratitude, and on behalf of the committee we'll send Mr. Holden and his family a letter of gratitude.
I think that motion will be made by the whole committee and seconded by the whole committee. And all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. The next one, as you know, the school district has spent the past year examining some highly qualified instructional materials. That's their HQIM work that Dr. Chase has been leading. And so we have these old journeys materials. And so the teachers, of course, would like to make some room, but also would never want to dispose of any educational materials. There has been a request from some students to take books home for the summer. So we are requesting that the committee allow us to, we have old and obsolete, we'd like to deem the Journeys materials as obsolete as the new materials are coming in, and send them home with students for the ability to take them home and be able to read the stories and have access to them during the summer and beyond. Declare them obsolete and then allow it?
We do, but Ms. Dunn, we'll get to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that the school committee declare as surplus the obsolete Journeys materials. So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. Roll call vote.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter? Yes. Mr. Amico? Yes. Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you. The second motion to allow students to receive and take home the now surplus Journey materials for their use over the summer and beyond. So moved.
Motion made by Ms.
Second.
Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. Any discussion on the motion? If I can, not seeing anybody, can we also contact Citizens Inn to see if there are any shelters in Peabody that would benefit from these materials? And Chief Daly, who is our MEMA representative for perhaps any homeless students that might be living in Peabody or the area that would benefit from these materials as well. Is that okay to amend that motion, Ms. Dunn?
Absolutely. A book should never be thrown away.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Mr. Olympia?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Dr. Vidala?
Thank you. I know there will be a lot of families that are very appreciative and a lot of teachers that are very appreciative of the support of the committee on that. So the next item on the agenda, you have a memo in your packet from our business manager, Larry Fleming, regarding a food service audit that we recently had. And so this is a little strange one because typically we would not come to you about raising a price, but we do have a corrective action around our breakfast price does not meet the minimum that DESE requires. And I typically would not bring something like this to the committee. However, there is a benefit to this in terms of our reimbursement. So by raising the minimum price to $1.57, which is their bare minimum, many neighboring communities are $1.75, we would not recommend that. But by raising it to $1.57, we would be reimbursed for all the free breakfasts that we give out next year at a rate of $1.57 instead of $1.35. And then moving forward, we could put this back on the table. They are asking us to have the minimum standard of $1.57, and it would help make us a little bit more sustainable. So all of the breakfast that we go to free students, we would be reimbursed at a higher rate. So that is why I am bringing it to the committee. I know that there is typically not an appetite to raise fees on students. However, in the world of universal free breakfast, this would help us as a district to receive a higher reimbursement rate.
Ms. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Vidala, thank you for explaining that because I could not figure out why this was coming to us, especially such an odd price too. But now I understand. DESE is just... Anyway, in line with this too, and I know that the reimbursement needs to be adjusted because of what's going on. It's a bit off topic, but have we heard anything, has anyone heard anything about the free lunch and breakfast programs? Is it still before the state legislature next week?
I believe it's still in conference committee.
Okay.
And it is on the agenda. It was in the latest budget, so I believe it's in conference committee. Senator Lovely sent us a very nice response. I know a lot of the local legislators are supporting to keep that in the budget. So I'm optimistic about that. But I do think it's still part of that conference committee. It's not, the budget, the state budget is not finalized just yet.
Right, and I do understand there's gonna be a lot of paperwork for it, so if this is gonna help us, I will make a motion that we raise the breakfast price to the DESE required minimum of $1.57 per breakfast. So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. Any discussion on the motion?
Yep.
Ms. Dunn?
It's made with the intention of getting that kind of money returned to our district for free breakfast. For the record.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. So, Ms. Dunn is obviously smarter than I am, but I still don't understand this. So,
You're a lawyer, this is paperwork, come on. But it's crazy with DESE.
so nobody's paying for this, but we're getting reimbursed at the $1.57. So there's no out-of-pocket increase to any students. Is that what you're saying?
As long as the legislation goes through. We are required to do this, however, it gives us a higher reimbursement. So no one who gets free lunch a free breakfast would pay a penny more. However, this gets us, and because it's a federal program, the state wants the reimbursement from the federal government as well. So it is a bit of a paperwork issue, but it does benefit us in terms of our reimbursement numbers.
Okay, I do understand it, and ask that, and I'll support it for those reasons, but I do ask Dr. Vidala if the circumstances change to the point where there's an additional out-of-pocket expenditure for any of our students in regard to breakfast, that you bring this back to us for a further vote. Seeing no other discussion, roll call vote.
Mr. Olympia?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Dr. Vidala.
Thank you. Last item is a little end-of-the-year recap. So before we get into some of the nitty-gritty, it's celebration time in the Peabody Public Schools. We had a wonderful week of senior celebration with their senior barbecue and their prom. Convocation was amazing. They had a great night for their graduation. Many of our seniors are still volunteering in schools today. We saw Emma Bloom at the South Memorial School volunteering in a first grade classroom before she went to her softball game. So we have a number of kids still participating. Over the past couple days, we have, actually last week, we had the PLA graduation, the Peabody Prep virtual graduation, the community schools graduation, and we've begun the moving on ceremonies. So Dr. Chase and I attended 3 moving on ceremonies yesterday, 3 today. Tomorrow begins the Higgins and the Burke, more Higgins on Thursday, and the Carroll on Friday. So it's a big days of celebration. You know, we had, our band did excellent. Mr. Swanson, I appreciate the pictures that you sent, and we were very excited about some of the competitions that we had, and our athletic teams are also doing very well. Softball team's playing tonight. Last heard, top of the 4th, they were up 1-0. Abby Betancourt was pitching a no-hitter. So we'll continue that. They're doing very well, but it is celebration time. I know you're not supposed to talk about it, but we're not there. It is celebration time, and this is really a time it's exciting for us to be able to bring the families back in. And at a lot of our moving on ceremonies, the kids are talking about the experiences. And I think that was one of the things that this committee was very adamant about, was bringing back the experiences of our kids with field trips and athletic events and performing arts events and science fairs. And it's great to hear the kids being excited about that and the parents gathering and celebrating the end of the year things. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Chase, who has a number of things to celebrate over the next couple of slides. So we'd just like to share some things with you as well.
So up on the slide on the screen are just some of the highlights from this year. I won't read through all of them, but I'll point out a couple of them. So this year, through a lot of people coming together to say, I'll take a chance, I'll try something new, we were able to work with teachers to become informal leaders with curriculum facilitation. And so at the K-5 level, they receive training with the Great Schools Partnership, and were able to lead groups of their colleagues through data analysis, curriculum, discussions about what they were teaching, and even Promethean boards and how those were being used within classrooms. So a lot of, thank you. So a lot of conversations about teaching and learning and how to move forward. So it really shows that everyone in the district is really holding on to a growth mindset and understanding that there's lots of good work that's been done up to this point, and moving forward just means building upon that good work to push forward and give the best to our kids. In addition, another huge project this year was a year-long project for high-quality instructional materials. And so one of the highlights of that was really being able to involve as many voices as possible. We allowed anyone that wanted to pilot or field test materials to do so that we could get as many voices as possible. And we are now looking forward to some professional development on June 22nd or June 23rd. We tried to give choice to folks so that they could get a head start on understanding those new materials. And I'm so excited. We have 113 people signed up for that PD. So we purposely looked at June 22nd and 23rd because people aren't quite in the beach mode yet. So you're still in that school routine, and coming into the building doesn't seem like such a hassle. So I'm so excited for that. And I think teachers, when they ask the question of how can we move aside some journeys materials to make room for the new stuff, I think that's such a positive sign that we're ready to move forward. There's also been lots of hiring this year, so continuing to build the team and really get on board with building some consistency within the district. And again, on the on the good work of others who have come before us. And then finally, there's some compliance stuff that we've made it through. So these aren't the necessarily most exciting things, but it's an opportunity to take stock of what we do well, and what we can do better going forward. And we've come through these audits with some good suggestions that are more in line with what we'll be doing for the future anyway. So some great reports on the audits. All of the work that gets done can't be done in a vacuum on an operating budget, and sometimes it requires some professional development, some assistance from DESE in terms of the funding for these projects. So up on this slide, you have a bunch of the grants that we've been awarded this year. CTE grant with Maria Ferry, and Shannon, as she comes in, pulled in a $270,000 grant for CTE programming. So it's a nice way for Maria to leave the district and for Shannon to come in and working on that partnership. Dr. Lord, as you heard from his presentation, has put a ton of hours into the CELIS work and the grant that goes along with that. We've also been fortunate to receive funding from the Peabody Education Foundation and Bar Foundation, so outside organizations that have been able to augment what we're offering here. Accelerating Literacy was another large grant that helped us purchase the high-quality instructional materials. And then some of these smaller grants, like the MyCap grant, is small in dollar amount, but offers professional development. And that MyCap is a DESE grant that focuses on college and career planning, and being able to give kids attention to whatever area they might be interested in going into. The HISIP, that was a really popular grant among our students. So our high school students were able to be paid for internships in our elementary schools. We hope to continue that moving forward. And then this interesting one, Accelerating Mathematics, DESE was able to fund on our behalf continued participation in ST Math for all K-5 schools, and additional math funding for the South School through the 1-8 Foundation. So that's a value of about $60,000. And then finally, grade 9 was interested in using new math materials, and that was also allotted to us from DESE, and that at a value of $20,000+ with some PD thrown in there. Last, the work is certainly never done. So if we look ahead to 22-23, we're already starting to make a list of some projects that we'd like to work on. There are several really interesting networks that DESE is offering next year. One has to do with learning acceleration, and that includes coaching and professional development for us. Another that we're waiting to hear on right now is building a sense of belonging. And then finally, instructional leadership team support, which really focuses on grade appropriate instruction. The high quality instructional materials work will continue, because once you purchase the materials, that's just the beginning. And then there's implementation. So again, using the work of teachers and having teachers be involved in the process of making the implementation as smooth as possible. DESE has some taglines that say the first year is about trying things out to see what works in terms of timing. The second year is really about doing, and the third is about owning. So we'll be looking at those pieces of the process. Middle school science is also in need of some updated materials that are aligned to the curriculum frameworks, and so we'll be looking at that this year. It's an opportune time for them because their license is running out, so it would be a natural way to bring in those materials. And we're constantly pursuing grant opportunities that can help our kids. We're looking at one for expanded tutoring that looks possible and promising for us. And finally, summer projects. I think Dr. Vidal is going to take that one.
Sure, and I know we've been trying to have a security meeting. We haven't ultimately got it booked yet, and I'm sure that we will. But I did want to share 3 projects that are related to building security that we have been working on with the police department, with our technology department, and with the city. And so I'm pleased to announce that these 3 projects will be moving forward this summer. They were in the works beginning last summer, and we worked on all the details. So as you know, at the Higgins, we have state-of-the-art door access where they're card readers, you can get in, doors are not propped, it's very much a secure environment, and the card tells us electronically who accessed the building. We are going to upgrade all of our door access across the city in all of our schools to be the same thing. So, for example, if the police were to respond, they would have a card that could get into any door. They would have that access. A teacher would have access from, you know, the beginning of the school day, probably an hour before until an hour after. People who travel from school to school would have access with their ID card to each of the schools that they get into. So teachers who took their kids out to recess at the elementary level would not have to prop the door. They would be able to key themselves in. If a teacher loses it, we just deactivate the card and we issue them a new one, and it's easy to make sure. So it's not like we have to make keys or anything like that. So it's a real big security enhancement for us, and it definitely helps us. So that has been in the works, and that's going to happen this summer. The security camera upgrades at the high school are online for this summer, and they will tie in directly with the police department, similar to the system that they have here at the Higgins, which is much upgraded compared to what we have at the high school. So that will be in place, and as well a new phone system. And so the phone system will be integrated with City Hall, and we'll be able to use 5-digit codes to go between any city departments, including the police, fire, and City Hall. Will be able to call them through 5 digits. We're also working on this upgrade to the phone systems for our clerks, have the ability to record calls. So as it comes in, if there were a threat or anything like that, they can record the call, and it will send us a WAV file of the recording. We'll be able to share that with the police department. So there's a number of things. There's also an app on the phone that you could put, an app that you could call from your phone to the office. So some people have wanted to, maybe had a concern about calling from their personal cell phones to a parent if they were after hours, but there was an emergency they needed to get out. There's an application that would allow them to call through the phone, through the school's office, and come up as that number. So it's a big upgrade to the phone system. These are all in the works, but it is a big piece of our security as well. We're also working with that phone system to make sure that our elementary school principals can make all calls from the office phone. So all of those upgrades are in the works. Those are things that we wanted to talk about publicly in the wake of the days immediately following the tragedy in Uvalde. We didn't think it was appropriate to talk about the things we're doing. We wanted to more talk about meeting the social and emotional health of our students and make sure that they felt safe and that our kids felt safe. But we're doing a number of items. The other thing, and I know Mrs. Dunn has talked quite a bit about this, during the Welch School building project, the main office being moved to the front of the building is a very much a security and safety component. And so the school looks aesthetically pleasing, but there are windows on the outside, there's a line of sight, and the police during our trainings talk a lot about line of sight. So, you know, that will be a huge upgrade compared to where they're at right now. And then in addition to that, I know that we're working with Mark Sayer, who is the civilian training officer for the police, to come into our schools and to do a really enhanced amount of training. You may recall in the fall we did some enhanced trainings at our schools. We're just brushing the surface, but you know, we know we can be better, but we will continue to do that. So I did want to share some of those things that we are doing because we are excited about the work and the partnership that we have with our school resource officers and the police, fire, and Atlantic Ambulance. So I'll pause there. That's the end of the superintendent's report, but happy to answer any questions, or Dr. Lord or Dr. Chase could answer questions as well.
Mr. Amico?
Great. Thank you, Dr. Vidal, for all those potential upgrades this summer. They're definitely needed for our security of our buildings and our staff and our children. I also wanted to thank Dr. Chase. My trusty calculator added up $771,800. Was it 772? Oh, okay, I'll round it up. What is that? What you came up with? Okay, all right. I might have missed one. All right. So thank you so much. You know, football teams have offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. They're specialists, right? They're specialist coaches. Baseball teams have the bench coach. They have the pitching coach, who basically just really handle that section. And we have Dr. Chase, who is really the curriculum person and expert. So thank you so much for what you do in our district. And I know the teachers really value your expertise. So thank you.
Thank you, but I have a lot of help and willing people to step up and say, let's try something. So for all of those folks, thank you.
Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you. And I want to follow on with what Mr. Miko said. Thank you all. This was a great presentation. A lot of work being done and a lot of work coming. And I also want to thank Dr. Vidala because so many people will come to school committee members and they want to know, what are you doing for security? What are you doing? What are you doing? And what folks just heard is a good description of what's going on, but I'm glad that we can explain to people we cannot give the specifics of our security mechanisms and policies and procedures because by their very nature, they are confidential. And I know that people do need to understand that they may not hear the discussions that we will have about specifics, but those discussions are going on, that they will go on, and that work is being done to make sure that our schools and our students and staff are as safe as possible. And that's what members of the public need to understand. It's not something that we are allowed to discuss in public because it is trying to protect folks, but the work's being done. Thank you.
And if I just may add, thank you so much, Mrs. Dunn, for bringing that up. We sent out the email right in the wake of the Uvalde tragedy to let people know that we're here and we're here to help them and to support them socially and emotionally and psychologically. We want people to feel safe. And when I sent that out, a number of people reached out asking what we were doing, and I handled those calls one by one. And we called everybody back, and we built really good relationships with those people. And I encourage people to reach out to us personally so they can hear about the things individually. Not everyone was ready to hear that, and so we wanted to make sure that we were really respecting everyone. And so the people who reached out, I encouraged them, you know, this is what we're doing. Please share that with people. Please share with others if you'd like to come and sit with me and talk about it. These are all the things that we're doing. And the most important thing is that our kids feel safe. And I use the analogy of the Secret Service. So for our elementary kids, we don't want them to know that all those safety procedures are in there. They want them to go there and to feel safe. But when the president comes, we might not be able to see all of that security, but we know he's protected. And that's what we want our kids to feel, is they come to school and it's safe, and we know that we've done everything that we can to make sure that we're keeping them safe. And we continue to work with the police and the fire department to make sure that we're doing everything we can. So, you know, I encourage people to come to us individually, and I think, you know, as time comes on, when we are able to do more and share more, you know, we'll certainly do that. But, you know, I'd love to have some of our school resource officers and the trainers from the police department come and talk to them about some of the things that we're doing and some of the programs that we're going to implement next year. You know, at the beginning of the next school year, I think that would be a nice thing to do, is to invite them.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala, and your leadership team for that incredible report tonight. It seems like things sound better when I'm sitting with my back to the screen. I don't know why. In any event, we have a series of written communications. I'd like to take them up collectively. We have a communication from Senator Lovely regarding universal school meals that was referenced earlier. The two donations, one to the South Memorial School from ExxonMobil, the other to the Thomas Carroll School from ExxonMobil that were both referenced earlier. The donation and disposal of obsolete journeys materials, and a memo regarding food service pricing. And if I can add one other written communication, the written materials provided by Ms. Vecchio during her appearance at public participation. If I can have a motion to approve.
Motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Second.
Thank you. A motion to receive made by Ms. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. Seems like that's been a combination tonight. All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. And we're going to move on to subcommittee reports. Mr. Amico, Education Subcommittee.
Nothing to report at this time, thank you.
Mr. Olympio, Finance.
Nothing new to report.
Mr. Olympio, School Safety.
Meeting coming in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Athletics and Wellness, Dr. Vidala, do we have an update on the score up in Lowell?
Going to the top of the six outs away, 1-0, Tanners.
Okay. Nothing beyond that to report. Quality and Standards Subcommittee, Ms. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Quality Standards Subcommittee met last Tuesday on June 7th. We're going to be bringing forward the MASC recommended updates to 3 policies. We decided that they were appropriate to bring forward, but they just need to be put into the proper format for the board to look at them and approve them. They have, we have to correct some of the language in them. So those will come probably at the next meeting. We also are working on a policy regarding bathroom usage and maintenance at the high school. And that's a work in process, and we will bring that forward when that's ready for the committee as well. And we don't have a meeting scheduled at the moment for the next meeting, but it will be shortly.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn, Mrs. Dunn. Liaison to parent and student advisory boards?
Nothing to report for meetings, however, I will say it was really nice to read many of the announcements and newsletters of the PTOs. They're selecting members for parent advisory board, so I think in the fall we'll have a nice robust parent advisory board, and we'll have a schedule of meetings with speakers. And actually, Dr. Vidala, when you just talked about having our school resource officers and Officer Saya come in, that would be a great meeting. That would be perfect. So I'll pick your brain on that, and maybe that'll be the first meeting of the parent advisory board.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Building and grounds, to Dr. Vidala, can you please contact Mr. Hafey and see or learn when he anticipates being able to provide us with a estimate as to the repairs or building at the Kiley School? And also, I'd like to schedule a meeting to take up the matters presented by Mr. Hurley at the South Memorial School, the ventilation matters that he addressed. So we'll work on a time that's convenient.
And not to add to your agenda, we will be updating on the fire hatch, the ceiling of the fire hatch that was supposed to be redone above the auditorium, and the high school, the students and our teachers have put together a list, so they're just categorizing that list, which will be submitted to the subcommittee as well. So you'll have that list of all the locations of upgrades that need to be done to the bathroom. That is just about done. They want to make sure that they just prioritize the list for us, and they'll submit that to the subcommittee.
And just to further add to the list too, if we can work on a timeline for repairs at the high school to the toilets and the facilities, and also report back as to the rooms that were identified by Ms. Vecchio during her presentation today. Mr. Amico?
Through the chair, could we also add the sound system at the high school football field? That's been an ongoing issue. So if we can get a report on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
So the Building and Grounds meeting will be a retreat over the course of a weekend. Okay, anyone else with Building and Grounds? If not, Special Education Parent Advisory Board, Mr. Olympio.
I just look forward to seeing everybody in the fall and introducing them to Ms. Crompton.
Ms. Carpenter, Liaison to City Council and Legislative Delegation.
Nothing to report.
Redistricting Ad Hoc Subcommittee, nothing to report. We'll now move on to new business. Thank you, Ms. Dunn, for presenting or bringing to our attention the new leadership at the JROTC at the high school. Ms. Dunn, the next item on the agenda is yours as well, which are roof repairs at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School. Ms. Dunn?
Actually, I'll be honest, my questions would be for Mr. Hafey, and I was going to request that he come and speak to the school committee about the repairs at the roof. It leaked again last week. I was contacted by someone who told me about the leak at the stage area. We had been told that it was repaired. I want to make sure that that is accurate, and I would like to know exactly what repairs were completed, when they were completed, and if there is any information on why it is continuing to leak after those repairs.
We will invite Mr. Hafey to join us either at a subcommittee meeting and invite you, or
Yes.
at a public, at a general meeting before the board.
I know, because it really is related to that whole list that you were speaking about, so definitely, we do need a meeting on all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Custodial positions?
I would like to request a report. Now, normally, I'd ask our business manager to give us a report on how many custodians we have and where they are deployed. Now, because facilities is managed on the city side, I actually have to apologize because I'm not sure of the mechanism. So, I would like to make a motion that Dr. Vidala contact the mayor and request a report from Mr. Hafey that shows the number of custodians we have in the schools, where they are deployed in the schools, how many empty positions we have, and any other pertinent information concerning the custodial staff. Thank you. Okay.
May I add, and retirements in the foreseeable future?
Actually, yeah, that would be nice to know,
I
too.
think there are going to be
I know.
a significant number.
Okay.
Motion made by Ms. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Swanson. All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Ms. Dunn, bathroom monitors?
The bathroom monitors, this is something, I'm prepared to make a motion, and I can read it to you to begin the discussion because I would like to have a discussion about it. Here's my proposed motion, and I know it might be amended, but, so moved, to have the superintendent and his staff prepare a plan for bathroom monitoring at PBMHS, which will allow full-day coverage for every student restroom in the building. Said monitoring should include a cost analysis of personnel potentially hired only to monitor and care for the restrooms and to be supplemented by staff assigned to this duty. And this system should be in place by the opening of school. That's the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Now, if I can explain my thought on this, we have heard from so many people for so long about the problem of locked bathrooms at the high school. Much of it is because of vaping, which caused a huge issue with the fire department having to come when the fire alarms went off. But there are so many pieces of this issue with locked bathrooms. First and foremost, it is a health consideration. We know that we don't even have enough bathrooms in that building to conform with regulations. That's in the NEASC report, and it's gone into Boston with our MSBA hopes and wishes on a new building. In the meantime, we have facilities that cannot be used because they can't be properly monitored, and it isn't just about vaping, it's because of safety. What I would like to ask is, if we could explore, Dr. Vidala and his staff could explore, what it would cost to hire people at minimum wage to serve as a bathroom monitor. The reason for that is twofold. One, we have had problems with assignments of staff just because of the way the school day is structured, and there isn't enough ability to have coverage. But the other problem is, and you hear this all the time if you speak with the students, when a teacher is monitoring a bathroom as one of their duties, the teacher needs to lock the bathroom when their time is over to get to their next class to teach. So in between classes, if someone did have the time or the need to use a restroom, they can't do that at the high school because the way we have it structured, we can't monitor those rooms during class changes. If we hired people whose job was to monitor the restrooms, they would not have to go to a different duty station. They would be there during the change of classes. There'd also be someone there who could contact the custodians when supplies run out, or if there's a problem in the bathroom. We've had all kinds of issues with those bathrooms over the years, and we just had another one with the plumbing itself. If you put yourself in a student or even in a teacher's position, it would be very helpful if someone was right there on the scene that had a protocol where they knew who to contact right away, and that they had a method of contacting them. And I would recommend that whoever is monitoring the bathrooms is provided with, I don't know what is used anymore, whether it's, cell phones or walkie-talkies, but that they could be able to contact the appropriate people on staff who could come immediately instead of leaving the station to go look for someone. I also think that it would be helpful if we were able to utilize such a staff to supplement. If the teachers have to monitor a bathroom, and I know they will have to, it is part of the structure of how we have staff up there. It should be scheduled so that it is a minimal impact on the teaching staff, if at all. Because if we hire the right amount of people, we wouldn't need to have the teachers monitoring the bathrooms, and they could be freed up to do something else on those duty periods. I estimate 8 to 10 people. And that's because on the 3rd floor, there are 3 bathroom areas. On the 2nd floor, there are 3 bathroom areas, plus there is a new, I shouldn't say new, there is a newer area of handicap accessible, gender neutral bathrooms. That might need a person to monitor that area. I don't know. And then downstairs, we've increased the number of bathrooms in the building, which has been a burden on the monitoring and on the scheduling of everybody to monitor. Down in the cafeteria, there are 2 separate areas of bathrooms now, and they have to be utilized. They used to be able to lock those because you only needed to use them during lunch. We have D-House. D-House has no bathrooms. They need to use the cafeteria bathrooms, and the little Tanners also need to use the cafeteria bathrooms. There is a bathroom in the lobby, which I'm going to say it for the record, it's an absolute disgrace. That's a whole nother motion on repairs. But if that can't be monitored, then you don't need someone at that area that was traditionally only used for evening performances in the auditorium. And I'd like the staff to be able to have input in how to deal with the bathrooms in the locker rooms, because that's a different, separate issue. And we don't know what they need, but I'm asking for their input to come to us through Dr. Vidala with a plan that can be put in place for the beginning of the year. This is in line with what our student council has requested, what the parent-teacher-student organization was working on and had requested. It's in line with what our counterparts for Student Government Day have requested. Parents have requested it, teachers have requested it. Everyone's pretty much on the same page, and we have to take care of that this summer. So that's all the thought that went into that motion. Thank you.
Mr. Amico?
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Dunn, I agree with you 100%. Thank you for bringing this forward. I do believe during the budget session, we did mention and we did approve monies for the hiring of security at the high school for the sole purpose of opening up restrooms, and locker rooms. So I would absolutely support that. I personally don't think teachers should be doing bathroom duty. That's my own personal opinion. I do think we should have security personnel there with walkie-talkies that can get in touch with either admins or whoever else has a walkie-talkie, and whether it's custodians to clean up. And to your point, bathrooms should remain open, and there should be some kind of a scanning system where students have to scan in and out, sign in and out, so if they do any damage, those bathrooms are now secure, so to speak, and it's and I've talked to Mr. Swanson about this, kids should be able to go to school and use a restroom if they need to. You know, you wouldn't go to a restaurant if, you know, and sit down and have a meal, and if, you know, if they didn't have a restroom, you probably wouldn't go to that restaurant. So I think it's time, you're right. We need to focus on that building, and I would also, you know, if you'd like to add a motion, that we take a tour of the high school before it opens up in August. I don't think we've done that. Take a full tour, have a checklist of all the restrooms, have a checklist of those locker rooms, and let's make sure things get done, or at least get moved on, because before we know it, summer's a lot shorter than it used to be. You know, before you know it, we'll be back in school and, you know, back to square one. So thank you for bringing that forward. I appreciate it.
Mr. Olympio?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dunn, and I agree with Mr. Amico as well. We definitely have to think outside the box. This has been going on for too long. You hear the same stories, and it should not. I mean, it disheartens me when I hear students saying they can't go to the bathroom. Just a simple concept like that. So I think we do really need to think outside the box and do something radically different for the fall. And I think we all need to put our heads together and see what we have for resources, and let's work together on this. And really, I think we need to step up, you know, just the bathrooms in general, the cleanliness, and we have to do something. Yes, it's an old building, but there are certain minimum standards of cleanliness that should be there. There should be supplies there all the time. So that's been very frustrating to me over the last few years. So I'm hopeful that if we work together and we think outside the box, like some of the suggestions Ms. Dunn brought up, I think that'll be a step in the right direction to start the new school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Mr. Swanson?
Thank you. Through you to the committee. Yes, we did vote for 2 additional access for that purpose of hopefully reducing the amount of duties that the teachers have to do and open that access up for the bathrooms. I think your points are all very valid, and I think it ties together with the conversations we have to have with the facilities as well. As we've said, we teach, we keep saying that we want our students to have a safe, welcoming environment. If I'm in 5th period and I have to go to the bathroom, I'm not going to be paying attention to what my math teacher's saying. So I agree with all you were saying, and it's something we'll work through over the summer. Absolutely.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you, Mrs. John. That was very well thought out. I'm in complete agreement. Sadly, I feel like the problem will be the hiring piece. There does not seem to be the workforce that we've previously had in many positions. We don't even have enough people applying to be custodians, never mind for a minimum wage job. So while I'm in full agreement with you, and I will do all I can to help move this process along, I'm hoping that Dr. Vidala will speak to Ms. Randall and some veteran teachers to help come up with a plan, and hopefully we can get some bathroom attendants, hall monitors, however we're gonna phrase it, to make sure that those are available. We do need to come up with a solution, even if it's reaching out to our seniors, and I don't mean seniors in high school, I mean our seniors who are looking for some part-time work. You know, we have crossing guards that do some minimal amount of hours, somebody that might be interested in doing something like that, to have a competent body in there that can monitor. And I'm happy to help work on this, and I think we can get it done. Thank you.
Ms. Dunn?
Thank you. One of the things that I did wonder about, whenever we post a job, we're always usually looking for someone, and it will say, you know, full-time. But on something like this, because the workforce is so different now, I think that if we had to, and you could say part-time or full-time, if you had someone who wanted to work every morning of the week until noon, and then they needed to leave, and then hire someone from noon to 2 or 3, whatever we decide, I would be amenable to that as well, just because we do need to be flexible in order to find the appropriate people who are just looking for a minimum wage job that is a necessity.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. I seem to be the only person on the committee not in favor of this. We're talking about, first of all, we're collectively bargaining in public session because I think we're going to change the working conditions of our staff at the high school that already have these periods built into their work schedule. I'm not comfortable doing that. If that is something that we want to discuss, I think Mr. Olympio and his team are extremely qualified in taking that on during negotiations that are presently taking place, and that may be something we as a committee wish to have that team address during those negotiations. Secondly, I don't disagree that there's a problem. We all know that there's a problem. I think a big part of the problem is facilities, and bathrooms are closed because they don't work. And we need help with plumbers, and we need help with new sinks and toilets and things along those lines. Hiring a monitor isn't going to change that. We need our bathrooms. I'm not casting any blame or aspersions on any of the staff up at the high school, but they're shorthanded. There's just so much so many things that can get done in the man hours or people hours that are currently being occupied by our custodial staff and others. We're also talking about a population that's 15 to 18 years old, who are causing a lot of the problems. I mean, Mr. Amico, I think, addressed it with vaping. I think you brought up vaping, or maybe it was Mrs. Dunn, and the fire department having to respond to the high school to deal with alarms that are going off because students are vaping. I'm sure that that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what students are doing in the bathroom that aren't leaving them in the same or better condition than when they got there. I can't see making this a budgetary issue, certainly not after we just passed the budget. This isn't a new subject, you're right, Mrs. Dunn, this has been going on for a long time. However, we all know a significant number of people who attended Peabody High School. I know you did, and I know Mr. Olympio did. I don't think anyone else on the committee did, where there were more students who were in that building with fewer bathrooms, right? We talked a fewer bathrooms, and the bathrooms were open. They were open for use, and I don't know whether there were monitors there or not, teaching monitors, okay. But I think we need to address the facility side of it, and if we want to collectively bargain what we're gonna do with a staff member's workday, we should do that in the proper, through the proper process. So if there is gonna be a motion, and I think there's a motion, I don't know that there's a second, but I suspect that there will be a second. For those reasons and a few others, I just couldn't support this. And in addition, if we were going to want heightened monitoring of the bathrooms, before I would look outside to increase an expenditure and spend taxpayer money to watch bathrooms for 15 to 18-year-olds. Lieutenant Colonel was here earlier today and talked about the junior ROTC growing to more than 100 students in that building. I think this would be a great community service project for them if we could put monitoring into their schedules, or other students who, about a decade ago, we added a community service requirement for graduation. Self-monitoring may be a good thing. Sometimes peer-to-peer intervention, gets the job done. I don't know, but I can't see, again, collectively bargaining in public and having an expenditure of this sort for this purpose without addressing what I think is really the problem, which is the facilities themselves. So, Mrs. Dunn.
Just a point of information so that you know, the use of students as monitors was actually brought up and discussed at the PTSO meeting, and it was decided absolutely not, because the students would be put in such a difficult position of turning in a fellow student, speaking to a student about what they can do. Peer pressure is totally different than putting them in a position where they would be reporting on a classmate. It was felt to be very dangerous. So they did discuss that. And I will say for the record, I did not intend to make any type of an attempt to negotiate in public or collective bargaining in public. I'm looking at the wording of my motion. Again, this was simply to have Dr. Vidala and his staff come forward with a plan, and if needed, to have lay people serve as monitors. What I would imagine would come out of that plan would be perhaps job descriptions, cost analysis, that type of thing. So I apologize, the discussion did lead into that, but the motion did not and has no, had no intent to do that.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. I didn't think that there was any intent there or any malice on your part or any other committee member's part. I think it's kind of where the discussion led, just naturally, due to nobody's fault. We do have a motion on the floor. Seconded, Mr. Amico. Motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. Any further discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
No.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Amico, close of the school year.
Great, thank you. This has certainly been a very, very long school year. Any educator, any teacher I've spoken to has said that this has been the longest school year of their career. More so than the COVID year when we were staring at computers or even, getting back into a hybrid situation. This was the certainly the most difficult year I've had and anyone that I've spoken to, because the expectations were greater. Students are coming out of COVID. A lot of the students weren't ready to come out, and rightfully so. They were through a lot. We heard the great presentation from Dr. Lord in regards to social emotional learning and students at risk. And the brunt of that were teachers. Teachers really took that in the whole year. It was a very, very long year. So speaking of the school year, last session when we set the calendar for this particular year, the last school day was to be, I believe, the 20th of June. Right after we set the calendar, Juneteenth was listed as a federal holiday, which moved back the end of the school year to the 21st. This Friday will be the last school day for students. Okay. Most teachers who don't plan on being in this summer are probably going to be all cleaned up and ready to go on Friday. Some teachers or many of our teachers, especially those who live in the city, will be in their classrooms at some point during the summer. They always are. They stop in, they're working on something, they're adding something to their classroom, so we know we're going to have those people in. Dr. Chase had mentioned that over 100 teachers will be in the city for professional development on the 22nd or the 23rd. So basically, I'd like to make a motion, because it was such a long year, because I think teachers have fulfilled their obligation. They've been, and I've said this before, at the forefront. They're the first person in the classroom you see, they're the last person. They are the ones that advocate for their kids. They know their kids probably better than most of us know our own kids sometimes. They battle for their kids. And as a society, we have to be better at respecting teachers. And I'm going to go on a tangent here, but so be it. Teachers, police, fire, grocery workers. During this whole pandemic, they've been an afterthought. There are still people in the business world sitting at their computers in their pajamas working, and teachers, police, fire, grocery clerks, they've been in. Okay? So with that said, I'm going to make a motion to end the school year for teachers on this Friday, June 17th.
Second.
We have a motion made by Mr. Amico, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. Any discussion on the motion? Mrs. Carpenter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Amico. There's a lot of very nice things said about a lot of very nice people that are well-respected in our community and throughout the world, basically. I appreciate your sentiments on this. I do, and I appreciate all of our staff and our teachers in the city. And something that was kind of mentioned earlier is that we're bargaining outside of our agreement. So I'm just having a little bit of trouble with this because what I see is, while I echo your sentiments, this to me is a bargaining issue that wouldn't be appropriate to be brought up at a public meeting because it involves contract language. And I'm not sure of the behind-the-scenes meetings that took place to bring us here. So I'm having a little bit of trouble with the responsibilities of what that last day is supposed to be for our staff, which staff will get an additional day off, which staff will not in our district. And that's not to say that they don't deserve it. So I'm having a little bit of trouble with this meeting not being proper. And that's not to say how I feel about my vote, but I'm not sure if it's the right venue at this time. So I'm having a little bit of trouble with it.
Mr. Amico?
Or just for point of clarification, this isn't a negotiation issue. This is just the school committee. We set the calendar. We set this calendar last session, and without knowing that Juneteenth would even be a federal holiday. And because it was listed as a federal holiday, it was moved over. The end of the school year was moved over a day to the 21st. So I'm just looking at the whole calendar, and I'm just thinking it would just make sense to end the school year on Friday. And we've talked, and another reason is we've talked about the maintenance of our buildings. Getting our teachers out of that building, getting our staff, and I would say all staff. When I just say teachers, I say all staff that were going to be reporting to the building on the 21st. I just think it would allow us to get moving into our cleaning of our buildings, getting into those maintenance issues that we're hoping that get into. It's just an extra day to get into that. As for what the expectations are for that last day of school, I don't think there are any expectations. From what I've seen over the years is teachers report for that last day, they clean up their rooms, and they go home.
Mr. Olympio?
Yeah, no, just thank you. Just to echo Ms. Carpenter's sentiments that I'm uncomfortable. I don't think this is the proper venue to be discussing. We set the calendar, yes, but we also receive, if I'm not correct, input from the union for the calendar as well. So the calendar has been set for a good year. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just uncomfortable talking about this in a public setting.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, I'll speak on the subject matter. I agree that, first of all, thank you, Mr. Amico. Your intentions are good. You're a kind-hearted person. We agree on a lot of things and we disagree on occasion. This is going to be one of those times we disagree, and we respect each other. I respect you an awful lot. And, there's just certain things that have transpired to get us here that make me extremely uncomfortable. If we had sent an email, if any member of this school committee had sent an email to the any or all members of Unit A, their leadership would be all over us for contacting their membership to negotiate an item that should be in collective bargaining. And that's something that happened here, and I didn't appreciate it. I thought it was way over the line, and it doesn't have anything to do with the day off. I'm not sure that the day off necessarily matters to me that much, and if we were here, as Ms. Carpenter, or Mr. Olympio said, the calendar's been set for a year. If we were here in March looking at this date, and we referred it to finance so that the negotiating team could take this up, and we could come to an agreement on what we were gonna do, I think that it gets done. But the 11th hour, circumventing the superintendent, trying to undermine his authority in coming to us in this manner, certainly not appreciated, and I wouldn't do it to the leadership of Unit A or any other bargaining unit. If I had a disagreement with the president of Unit A and wanted something accomplished, I wouldn't go to the membership there. So, in any event, that's one thing. The process would have our attorney involved, right? And I think that we did get an opinion from our attorney saying that this is not the proper forum to have this matter discussed. On top of that, what if we had a school day on Tuesday, and that was our 180th day of school, and we petitioned DESE and said, well, kids are going to be going away for the summer camps are starting, it would benefit everybody to have Tuesday off since Monday is already a federal holiday. I don't think DESE would give us a waiver for 180th day. I appreciate teachers, I appreciate staff, I think they've worked very, very hard and have had extremely difficult circumstances. But when you pull it back, this is something that they bargained for. They bargained to be here a day after students leave. And it just so happens this year to be a Tuesday after a Monday holiday. That's what collective bargaining is for. We honor the obligations that we have, and we do that. And if it's such an unimportant day, if it's a meaningless day, and I don't know whether it is or is not. You're an educator, I'm not. But let's get it out of the contract, right? If we want to reduce salary by a day and reduce work obligations to 184 days, then maybe that's something that we should do, but it should be done under the leadership of Mr. Olympio and you and Mrs. Carpenter, and Dr. Vidala and Don Kahn and others that are on that subcommittee. So for those reasons, I'm just not able to support what you're asking for tonight. Mr. Amico.
Great, thank you, and I appreciate that, and obviously I do respect your opinion. I do respect Ms. Carpenter and Ms. Olympio's opinion as well on this. For point of clarification, we have gone over the 180th day, so there would not be any kind of a waiver requested, so I just wanted to make that as a point of clarification.
Thank you. Mr. Swanson.
Thank you. And again, through you to Mr. Miko, again, totally respect the request here. But the way this came down, the timing of it, we're put in a bad spot. We're going to, no matter how we vote, we're going to be creating a rift. Although I would love to support it, I want to do right by the teachers, as we are pro-teachers, pro-staff. I think this came down inappropriately, and unfortunately at that point, I can't support it.
Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote.
Mr. Olympio?
No.
Mrs. Carpenter?
No.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
No.
Mr. Swanson?
No.
Mrs. Dunn?
No.
That concludes our agenda. Please, excuse me, Mr. Amico.
Sure, thank you. I just had one more item as the end of the close of the school year. As we know, June 30th we'll end this fiscal year. We'll end our budget, and we'll start our new budget. I did want to set us in the right path for July 1st. I did want to make a motion to sunset a position, the Director of Student Services position. I'd like to have a sunset clause on that for June 30th, 2023. So moved.
Second for discussion.
Motion made by Mr. Amico, seconded for discussion by Ms. Dunn. Mr. Amico?
And my clarification on that is a position that essentially was due to a contract. And if we continue it past 2023, that would add additional $130,000, $40,000, $150,000 to our budget. So I just wanted to make sure that next year we have that ability, we have that opportunity to discuss it during our budget time, because essentially it was an added position and we did not have a job description set.
Dr. Vidala?
Thank you. Respectfully, Mr. Amico, I disagree with the characterization that this is a new and added position. It was repurposed, a position that is not in the budget. It is paid for out of a grant. It was a repurposing of the Assistant Director of Special Education to a much-needed Director of Student Services that many districts have. It is an essential position within the district, regardless of who is in that position. This is an essential position. I don't know if this is out of line. We've been down this road with a request to change the position. It is in the school committee bylaws that if we vote on something and you stay it, the committee must honor it. This seems like it's another opportunity to maybe attack this specific position or get into personnel. And frankly, this is an essential position. We've talked about it in the budget. We will talk about it in the next budget. I don't know that this is appropriate at this time. It's an important position to the district. It is not in the appropriated budget. It is in a grant. It is repurposing a position so that the structures of the school department are able to meet the needs of our kids. So I appreciate your sentiment on this, Mr. Amico, but I respectfully disagree.
Gentlemen, let's keep this a little tight. The hour's getting late and we all appear to be a little bit tired. Mr. Amico?
Thank you, through the chair, and I appreciate your sentiment on that, Dr. Vidala. However, as an elected official, I do have the right to bring forward a motion, and the other 6 members of the school committee do have a right to second that motion, and according to Robert's rules, either vote in favor or against. Whether I'm right or wrong, that's a motion that I've put forward, and I really am offended at your accusation.
Gentlemen,
But
please
we can
speak.
discuss that at a later time. But there is a motion on the floor, and I believe that that position is a duplicate position. I don't have a job description in front of me, so I cannot, in my right judgment, allow that position to move forward to 2023 at a rate of $140,000, $150,000, whatever it may be. So moved.
If I may just remind members of the committee and anyone speaking at this meeting to speak through the chair and not directly at anybody. Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Not to speak directly to anybody, but I do believe that whether we sunset this position or not, we will still have the ability to make that decision at budget time to cut a position. So whether this motion goes through or not, I think we still have the ability to accomplish the things that you're looking for.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Anyone else? And just to reiterate Mrs. Carpenter's sentiments, we hear you. Mrs. Dunn?
I do have one question. Is this a position that runs year to year, or is there a contract on that with a date definite on that position? Is this a contract position or a staff position?
I'll take that question through me to Dr. Vidala. Dr. Vidala?
Thank you.
So I guess I'm unclear if you're asking a budgetary question or a personnel question. So
I'll be
we've,
honest, I'm not sure. The only
Yeah.
reason I'm asking is because if it's someone, if I guess it is a personnel question.
So I'd be happy to table this and maybe do it in executive session, have a conversation about personnel during that appropriate venue. Thank you.
Mr. Olympio?
Yeah, through the chair. So, yeah, for a whole host of reasons, I respect your position, Mr. Amico, but this is another one that I'm just a little uncomfortable with discussing in public. I think it dives into personnel, but we do have the ability, we'll have the budget next year, and we'll be able to review the budget and make any appropriate changes if we need to. Thank you.
Is it the will of the committee to enter into executive session at this time?
I'd be okay with that.
I'm not permitted to make a motion from the chair, I don't think, but I would if I could. There is a motion on the floor, and there's a second for discussion purposes. Mrs. Dunn, do you wish to amend your second for a vote, or how do you wish to proceed?
I'll just leave it as a second. I won't amend it. I'll second the motion as opposed to second for discussion only.
Motion made by Mr. Amico, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, Dr. Chait?
Actually, I'll make a motion to go into executive session. And I'll retract my motion, and we'll go into executive session. Thank you.
Mr. Amico's initial motion is off the floor. He's now made a motion to enter into executive session with the intent of coming back to public session, Mr. Amico, or not coming, with the intent to come back to public session. Roll call vote?
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico? Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes?
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
We will return when we've concluded our executive session. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to return to regular session. It's now 9:30, returning to regular session. Mr. Amico?
Great, thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to withdraw my last motion. Thank you.
Mr. Amico, does that conclude your agenda item?
It does, thank you.
Seeing that we've concluded the items on the agenda, excuse me, Mrs. Dunn, did you want to say something?
Only about items for the next agenda.
Do you want to take them up in the regular course, or would you like to talk about it now?
I would just like to make sure that at our next meeting, we can get a report back about the whole issue raised on the seclusion room and the timeout policies, and, you know, let us know how many of those rooms are there, where are they, and, you know, a report on that. Thank you.
That will be on the next agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.